of an event called Sound Kitchen, which is happening during the Prague Quadrennial. It's a partner event to the Prague Quadrennial itself, and it's taking place at the Divaldovinstrasse, which is in Hamu, the music college, which is on the west side of the river. There's various other bits and pieces happening there and in Hamu. There is a QR code on the poster just on the side there, and on our poster here, and the website address is sound-kitchen.net, and I'll tell you about that again later, but if you want to kind of find anything about information about the event. Sound Kitchen's been running for a few iterations, and this is the first one that I have been part of organising here in Prague. But we'll talk a little bit about the history of that and what it is. But first of all, we're going to kind of introduce ourselves in the panel. We're still waiting for one or two other people. So my name's Peter Rice. As well as being a co-curator for Sound Kitchen, I'm a sound designer for theatre and performance, working mainly from London. I'm also an educator. I'm the course leader and lecturer for sound design and production at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Association of Sound Designers in the UK. I'm going to introduce our panel members, and then hopefully another one will join us at least. This is Roger Alsop, who is one of the sound artists presenting at Sound Kitchen. And this is Dariusz. Could you say your surname so I don't... Mazurowski, thank you. Roger, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about who you are and where you're from?
Hi, yes, Roger Alsop. I have a long history in working with audio over the last 40 years, and that's been through making music, through
louder
bands. I can't make it up now. Magic. Am I there? Yes, I'm there. So working with bands, worked as a professional musician for quite a long time, went back and did some studies, and then started working with more kind of sound art and computer-based systems. Ended up working at Melbourne University at the Victorian College of the Arts and teaching sound design, which I did for 23 years there. And that ranged from teaching undergraduate technology stuff, then to teaching design stuff, and then moved that into working almost exclusively with research students towards the end of that. So I had quite a large number of people who went through a wide variety of things, everything from how do we make sound what we do. Okay, all right, sure, sorry, my mistake. So yes, I'm not so used to holding microphones. So yes, I get a lot of work with research students, and that would be doing everything ranging from working with systems, to working with the aesthetics of sound, the history of sound, to working with sound in a variety of different contexts. And then that also went into working with costumers and AV, VR artists. So it's been really, really interesting. So it's just a wonderful thing. If I look at kind of my particular approach to sound is, for me it's the thing which is absolutely ubiquitous. Wherever we're hearing sound. Murray Schafer has this wonderful text called, in which he says the line, "You can't close your ears. We can always close our eyes and shut out that world, but we can't close our ears." And our ears, we hear things unconsciously. We have to deliberately look at something, but I can hear the sound of my voice coming off the back of that wall without knowing. And for me, that's one of the best things about audio, and it is also the thing that then creates the situation and the environment that we're in. I was just talking with Peter, we had that beautiful Australian exhibition there playing that lovely little music, but there's a part of me that just wanted to hear Ace of Spades or just blaring through the system, because a completely different energy would be created in the room. We would all be different human beings in this space, simply because of the air that was moving around us. And I think one of the wonderful things that we can do, particularly in sound, is we move air. And in moving air, we create a space, we create a relationship to a space. So that's it.
Great.
Good enough?
Dariusz.
Hello, my name is Dariusz. I'm from Gdańsk, Poland. I'm a composer of acoustic music. and while my music is primarily focused on acousmatic and acoustic works, I also compose for instruments in conjunction with electronics. Also doing improvised acoustic music. Also a producer, record producer, also a writer. I write usually a lot of articles about music making, about technology, about aesthetical questions, and things like this. I'm also a member of the executive board of Polish Society for Acoustic Music. I'm the secretary of the executive board, so we're an organization which promotes acoustic music all over the world. I work primarily with analog modular synthesizers in conjunction with digital technology. We have computers, plugins like three-dimensional sound diffusion across the multi-channel systems. So I can say that my approach is hybrid. I'm trying to connect to create some kind of a new quality using analog, digital stuff, old, new. I'm really very keen on some old things, so I own a lot of old vintage stuff, even some older than myself, which is quite rare. Yes. So I think I'm always trying to find a kind of something unique, to find my own way how to try the music, but I think that we can dive a little bit deeper maybe later. So that's my brief introduction. Obviously, I participated in the past and still participate in a lot of major festivals all over the world, in both Americas, Asia, Europe, obviously. I've never played in Antarctica. That's my dream. That's my dream.
Yet.
Yet. So if there is anyone who's able to organize such game, I'm very much interested. Okay.
Very good. Well, this is the place to do that if there's anywhere in the world of a coming together of countries.
I'm a Northern man. I'm from North Poland, so I like cold.
Yeah, okay, good. So, yeah, it's a good sell. Very good, very good. Thank you. So Sound Kitchen will be happening over the next 3 days. There are 2 sessions a day at 12:30 and at 6:30. Excuse me. We have 30 artists playing over those 3 days, so as the smarter ones of you will realise, it's 10 artists a day. In sort of 2 blocks of 5 we're doing it really. There are people represented from about 15 countries all over the world. A lot of people have come to the Prague Quadrennial already and are going to be participating because they're already here. Some people have come from very far away specifically to perform in the Sound Festival. And it's really a celebration of what sound, the kernel of it is what sound is for performance, but it's much, much wider than that. It's about what sound is in the world, how we work with sound. We've got some artists who are working simply with materials to make sound and no amplification at all. We've got some artists who are working in very complex electronic environments. Some artists who are really focusing on the spatialization. So the sound system that we've got in the theatre is a 24-speaker sound system, so that gives the opportunity for the artists to work in spatial sound, and we're seating the audience in the middle of that. Sometimes it's projection work and sometimes it's purely audio work. So there's hopefully a whole range of stuff that we can present over those 3 days. The Sound Kitchen has been going for about 15 years now. It was set up initially by a man called Steve Brown. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. And I worked with Steve Brown 50 years ago at the Royal Exchange Theatre in Manchester. He was the head of sound and I was the deputy head of sound when he worked there. And for every 4 years in Prague Quadrennial, it came here, and it was sat under the guise of Oyster and of Prague Quadrennial. Sound Kitchen isn't actually aligned with either of those organisations, but it repeatedly happened, and Steve managed to generate this conversation with Oyster and with Prague Quadrennial about the relevancy of sound as an art form within performance. Which is something that hadn't really been recognised before, and is something that is still, in the time that I worked with Steve from the kind of mid-90s, it really has emerged as a recognised art form now, in a way that people will credit it, or a lot of the time will credit it. I actually see there's quite a lot of credits in this exhibition which don't credit sound, so there's maybe still more ways to go there and work to do. But in the UK, I think definitely it's become an understood and respected scenic discipline now. And so the Sound Kitchen happened every 4 years. It also now happens as part of World Stage Design, which is an offset 2-year cycle. So we most recently did Sound Kitchen in Calgary in the September of last year, and then before now it's been in Taipei. And Roger, can you maybe remind us previous Sound Kitchen as well, because you've been involved with it a little bit longer than I have. Yeah.
So my first involvement with Sound Kitchen was in 2015, which was when a call was put out for works to present here, and I saw that and thought, yes, I'll put something in. That was a beautiful situation. We had a lovely environment in Diwali November, I think, which was interesting. We were actually in a foyer, and Robin Whitaker, who is providing the sound spatialization systems and really looking after the development of the sound system that we worked through, had set something up, and it was such a wonderful thing to work through. It was like, I guess, for a pianist to sit down and play a recently tuned and maintained Steinway grand was the feeling of suddenly going and playing the right. You hit a note and it does what you think it's going to do, which is just great. And that was incredibly inspirational to work with. So there was also, as you'll see from this particular Sound Kitchen, such an incredibly wide variety of people who were involved, and the diversity of people who all kind of see their art form coming about through audio was quite extraordinary. It's then continued on. I was here in 2019, and that was a very interesting thing. It was much more a kind of like a showcase rather than a performance space. And then this one, also the 2 Centerfests, 2 World Stage Design in Taipei, and I didn't get to Calgary, but was able to piece there, and it was the same sort of situation. But one of the best things about it, I think, is that you get a whole lot of like-minded people who are also very diverse in what they do, all coming together and sharing this incredibly wonderful experience. And for me, that's the best thing with Sound Kitchen. And that's what its history has been, without kind of going into specifics, where we had this person doing this and this person doing that, but which I don't know it's all that valuable at the moment.
Yeah, we went for dinner last night with Robin, the other curator for it, and he said a very interesting thing. He was like, a lot of people who perform at Sound Kitchen, you kind of go, you're amazing, you're brilliant, you do this very unique thing. I don't know what you do for the other 364 days a year, because it's such a unique and particular thing that some of the artists bring to Sound Kitchen. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that over the next 3-4 days. So we're a panel of 2. We may be expecting someone else, so we'll see if they can make it as well. But we've got a couple of questions. We're going to play a couple of clips of artists who are performing at Sound Kitchen as well, so we can have a little listen as best we can to the type of work that might be on show over the next few days. But the first question I'd like to kick off with is to the panel is, what and where was your first connection to sound?
For me, the first one I remember is lying down on the grass in the backyard, and I heard Percy Sledge sing When a Man Loves a Woman, and I suddenly went, this person has just sent chills down my spine just by making a sound with his voice. And it was kind of game over after that. I thought, how do you do that? And then probably the next one was when I was playing a lot of guitar, and I was sitting in a bedroom in our house, and I'd set my amplifier up, pointed it in a certain direction, had a wah-wah pedal, and I found that as I was moving the wah-wah pedal around and stretching different notes, so getting different notes to play in and out of tune, I could start hearing resonances coming from that spot. This would play a different piece. It was just amazing, just kind of, I could make something that's not there happen, and that was also the point where I just went, right, this is something to really, really spend a lot of time with. And then it kind of just sort of kept on going in a very meandering path. And ended up here.
Dariusz, where was your first connection to sound?
Well, I came from a non-musical family. I'm the first musician and composer in my family, but my parents were great music fans, so they had and still have a huge collection of records. So I listened to music when I was a really very little kid, and I was fascinated by two things: music and what we call surroundings, just simply everything around.
Yeah.
And since my parents also had two tape recorders, one reel-to-reel huge tape recorder and one smaller cassette, I discovered that I can record myself. I can record my voice. I can slow it down to produce different sounding voices. And I started recording some kind of radio plays, theaters. I was the only actor, obviously. And then I discovered how to create some special effects, like with water, with whistle, and even with my father's pocket calculator, which has a side effect, produces a very interesting sounds like buzzes, whistles, and stuff like this. So I almost destroyed it, but it was my first electronic instrument. And then, listening to the radio, I discovered that I'm not crazy. There is a music like this. That someone is doing the same thing, but obviously much better than me.
Yeah.
And that was the first step how I was introduced to the world of acoustic music, of recording sounds, of processing sounds, of creating different textures. So obviously, since I like the traditional music, which is based on melody and rhythms and all those traditional things, like for example, a well-tempered system. I was always very much into everything which was behind or in between.
Yeah.
I like micro-tuning, I like all those noisy effects, crazy sounds, natural sounds. So I think the natural step was to become a composer.
Yeah.
Because I consider myself a composer. I feel there is subtle difference between composer and sound artist, which is not necessarily the same, but I'm not going into too much academic discussion, obviously, so it's not our topic. So that was my introduction. I may say that sound is always with me, almost from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I was always, I may say, obviously, when I was a kid, television was very popular, but I was much more into radio, into the sound. I remember nights where my parents slept. I put a headphones, uncovered the window, looked at the moon, a full moon, and listened to crazy electronic music and dreaming. And I just had back then one question to answer. If I would like to be an astronaut or a musician. And it was a very reasonable decision that being an astronaut is much harder to me, because I'm not an American.
Yeah.
And my country has no space exploration program. So it was a very reasonable decision.
And it's slightly harder to be.
I'd be a composer of a space music.
Well, that's great to hear. We're going to play a few clips. The clips are all about 4 or 5 minutes long. We'll try our best to listen to those clips. The first one that we're going to play is Dariusz's clip, so we can get a sense of how those influences might have fed into the work that he now makes. That's great. Thank you very much, Dariusz. Definitely some influences from the kind of looking out of the bedroom window into the stars there. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that particular piece of work and how what we see there relates to the rest of your work, some of the equipment, some of the processes that you go through.
Okay, so this is a compilation of 4 different concerts. The oldest one from 2014, and the last one, which is was video still only. It was played in Oslo this March, also under the artificial coexistence program. First of all, what you see, it's a minimum stage equipment, which I work in the studio. I have a much bigger staff, which the live equipment is completely separated. This is a completely different set of things, which is all the time, and Kai is just waiting for another gig. So that's a combination of pre-recorded material. I mean, because my initial idea was how to play acoustic music, my favorite type of music, live. Not only to reproduce it, just, to sweep the button and replay as a fixed audio material, which is not very appealing and exciting for the audience. And so I developed my own way how to do such kind of music, starting from pre-recorded material and then doing some kind of a deconstruction and reconstruction on the stage, adding sometimes even improvised live parts and synthesizers and other equipment using three-dimensional specialization of the sounds and many other techniques. So I'm using on a stage, using a small modular staff, a mixing desk, an interface, some microsynthesizers, accessories, and obviously a lot of plugins. A lot of things are in my computer, which obviously, we all have to carry the whole equipment with us, and we just have 2 hands, and we have to carry this. And so a lot of things can be now. That's the benefit of the 21st century, that you can get a lot of things inside of a computer, even a huge systems, which obviously, since I'm very much into analog stuff, I may say that digital stuff, even the best virtual emulations, do not sound the same. They are not worse, they are not better, they're simply different.
Yeah,
that's what makes the difference. Yeah? And I love to use a digital technology and analog technology to connect those 2 worlds, but sometimes if we have to play live, it's necessary to find a reasonable compromise between having what we really want to have and what we can carry with us, and which obviously is under the limit of the economy. Because a joke.
No, but I had a very similar conversation to a musician the other day. It was like, what's the smallest flight case that can fit into a carry-on with all the rest of my clothing that I can get to tour as well? So yeah.
Yeah, so that's obviously what I'm liking, and usually I play 2 kinds of concerts. I mean solo, because obviously completely different chapters, collaborations. I do a lot of collaboration, but it's completely different topic. So we might talk about it a little bit later. And first of all is playing composed stuff, like what you saw was concerts made of composed stuff. So recorded compositions, which were in most cases published on albums. And obviously each time I'm trying to perform them in a little bit different way. So that's interesting that if you attend my concert, for example, today, and maybe next month, and I may play the same material, but not in the same way.
And how's that? Is that written down somewhere, or is that just imprinted in your memory of what the piece is that the variation comes from, or is it just a collection of samples and sounds which repeats itself in different ways? How do you? What is the piece?
It's actually built of different layers. The first one is we may say what we used to call the type in the past. Obviously, we are not using the type anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a fixed track. It's a bias. For me it's a score.
Yeah.
I don't need a paper score because I'm unable to focus on a paper or instruments or anything. so I don't need it, and I know my pieces, so it's not necessary. And then there are some clips, which I can launch the clips when I want to do it. And the next level are the parts performed live. So with synthesizers, effects, and a very, very small number of synthesizer patches are played as raw patches without any processing. So I used to plug everything into the interface, and then to process in some way with the digital stuff. Like, for example, I like very much granular processing, which is a very great thing for me. And then some of them really are also plugged out from that interface again to the analog signal path for the finalization for example, analog filtering and stuff like this. So, and obviously everything finally is mixed in a computer with some immersive processing to get a special three-dimensional effect, which obviously it depends on the number of speakers available in a certain location. So if there are, for example, 6, I can play 6, 8.
So you're using ambisonics then to realise it in the room?
Yes.
And a really nice mix of digital and analog equipment there. That's kind of it's great when artists are able to do that. But it is about the physical potential to actually transport and set it up in time, as we'll find later today. Are you playing later today, or is it tomorrow that you
today?
So later today. Brilliant. Roger,
the
maybe
second session.
The second session, at 6:30. Roger, maybe you could talk a little bit about your approaches to sound art and design, and where how your work kind of manifests itself, really.
For me, with the sort of sound art side of things, I really like to think about what my what's an idea I want to express. I'm currently engaged with this idea of responsibility, and the pieces that I'm working with are very much improvised, but with delays that occur at random times. So it's sort of like what I put into the world comes back at me, and I don't know when or how. And it's a kind of fun thing because I have to then interact with myself in the space and interact with, being responsible for my own actions, which I think is something which we haven't done for quite a while. That's my other side of my socio-political side of things. I also really like just working with the idea of what is this communicating and to whom is it communicating it. I'm not big on a didactic approach. I think that's just kind of entering into a space and letting the space be what it is, letting it start infecting in the way that it infects, and the way that it kind of contacts us and our spirits and our souls. Each of those has actually been quite a very individual and personal response, and maintaining that sense that whatever the response is valid. So, you know, you might be going rubbish and someone else might be going awesome, and they're both fine. From the kind of, but that's my sound art thing. From the design side of things, there's always that question of, okay, how much are you going to pay me to do this? So, and then that kind of relates to how much am I prepared to go outside of my comfort or outside of my interests. So more money, I'll do what you. If you give me money, I'll do what you want. And then the other side of it is that kind of maintaining that sense that the design has to actually be responsive, particularly in theatre. Has to be responsive to the moment. As soon as I saw QLab, I just went, oh, this is the death of sound. Standby for Q38A, go. I started thinking we really need to actually bring back to that situation where you're actually engaging with an actor and with an audience as you're making the work, as it's going along. And those are the things which I'm kind of very interested in doing, and I'm fortunate enough to be in situations where people hire me particularly to do that, which is really good.
Great. We're going to watch another video now. This is a film from two artists who are performing at Sound Kitchen, Elenira Panagura and Martin Parker, and the piece is called Shape, Form, Sound. It merges sculpture and sound processing together into a live performance and installation. Steel objects become digital performance instruments By using sensors, the sound will capture the sculptures and then comes back to life when the objects are moved. Eliniera is a sound artist and visual artist focusing on the development of creative new methods from forms of expressions that combine sound, objects, spaces and environments. Martin Parker is a composer of a sonic artist and thinks it as best you know what you're doing but don't know how it's going to happen. Which, yes, kind of relates to your point there. Oh, hold on a minute. Oh, well, this is a different video. This isn't one that I thought we were going to play. So this is Teddy Lorre. This is a different sound artist. Sorry, I've introduced the wrong one. Watch this one first. Very good. I'm going to stop that out just because we've got a few things to look at and talk about. So that's Teddy Lorre, who will be playing at the event as well. It's two quite similar sort of synthy-based films that we've shown there from artists, but there's a variation that we'll see slightly later on. But in response to that video and the one before, I'm kind of interested to know from both of you, what is your kind of opinion about the intersection of technology and sound, and how much do you depend on technology in the work that you're making, and how much does the natural world play into either your inspiration and thought or your end product?
Well, I think the music, all the time from the beginning, was connected to technology, because let's say, okay, the grand piano was always a product of top-notch technology of the age. So if you compare, for example, a modern grand piano produced nowadays, there's a huge difference between what was, for example, made in 18th or 19th century. So music was always, I think, if we're talking about an art in general, music was always that one with the strongest connection to technology. And obviously, since we are living in an electronic age, we are using as artists electronic technology. I think it's an obvious process that we are using the technology we can get now. So being born, say, 200 years before, I guess I would use the technology available at this time. And since I was born in the 20th century, I'm using the technology which is available today.
Yeah.
And well, okay, I'm very technology dependent, as we all are, And for now, you can show this. It could be an electronic instrument and even a professional electronic instrument, because once I was part of a big festival in Prague, Poland. I played my concert, and the day after, I was just a listener during the next concert, and I was asked to participate in a joint improvised session. But all my instruments were in a hotel. But I got my mobile.
Yeah.
So I installed a synthesizer app and played a concert with them. And the concert, was published on a CD.
Yeah, wow.
So that's how we are connected and dependent on technology. So just to put it in compact, I think that music was, and will be a product of technology, and even if you are listening, if you are a classical music, old music fans, if you are listening to Bach, Mozart, or any other classical composer recording, this is a product of a top-notch technology, which was recorded with the use of high-end microphones, on a fantastic digital systems, edited, and so on and so on. So I think it's pretty natural, and I must confess that I never asked myself how much I'm dependent on technology, how much it's important for me, because I was born with this.
Yeah.
I was surrounded with this, and we're using it. I think even it's our duty as artists to use the best we can get.
Yeah.
And regardless, we're composers, we're painters, we're writers, we are performing artists, whoever we are, we may and we should use the best technology can deliver. It wasn't an fantastic manifesto or statement, just what I
Just
think
your
about
opinion.
it.
Yeah, very good. Roger.
I think that's absolutely, that's how it is. We live in this technological world, and we're captured by it, and we're also inspired by it and made free by it. And for me, the thing is that there's this constant loop of technology kind of getting to a certain point, then when artists, most likely artists, grab onto it and go, what can I do with that? And then they push the use of the technology beyond what the people who created the technology intended. And then the people who create technology go, right, you can do that too. And then it moves around again. And we have this wonderful looping situation where the technology exists, we use it, we expand it, and then the people who create the technology then kind of step into that gap. And it's incredibly interesting just looking at it like something like a Fourier transform, which we use now to create an acoustic sense of a space. That started off as a way to understand economics.
Yeah, wow.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think for us is in the arts world is what we do inherently is just we transgress the boundaries constantly.
Yeah.
And then the boundaries kind of catch up with us, and then they put another set of unintended boundaries somewhere, and we inhabit that, and then it moves along. So we're kind of in this constant state of playing catch up and running in front at the same time. It's sort of cool.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Very good. We're going to watch another film now. This one is a sound artist called Nicholas Farris. Through observing the nature and behaviours that circulate the listening experience, how can we draw upon and discover new connections in a world where our attention span is continuously challenged? Traversing Worlds is both a fine art and music piece. Nicholas Farris will be demonstrating and performing his project Behaviours. This is an audio-visual piece offering a reflection on the ways in which we listen and respond to our sonic environment. This will be artistically demonstrated through the detailing the micro-inactivity of vibrations that occur between charcoal, paper and sound. Audiences will be invited to complete their own perception on listening as the experience that can be extended beyond the ear. Sorry, just going back one slide. I'm going to start that just because it's quite a long clip and it's a wonderful piece as well. And Nicholas will be playing that live. I think what I really like about that piece particularly is the literal microscopic focusing on sound and visuals. And the fact that Nicholas came to Sound Kitchen, he's somebody who is a graduate of the Royal Academy as an artist, not as a sound artist. He just works with materials and happens to have worked with sound in this particular piece, and some things are just other fine art pieces that he does. So it's a really nice mixture of stuff. I'm interested to know, with both of you, how much of the work that you are involved with or make is from your own generation, and how much of it is from other people approaching you or other stimulus? And then how do you find collaborating with other people on those examples?
For me, the majority of the work I do is self-generated, and that can either be because I have an idea that I want to explore, or an opportunity has been given to present something somewhere, and that's when I start working within a context. I have a variety of different approaches I take, different pseudonyms I work under, doing different sorts of things, and they're fun, but they're also kind of quite directed. So for me, a lot of the work actually is self-generated, but then also working to a commission is just a wonderful thing as well, because you end up being in a collaborative situation where, in the best of situations, everyone is trying to make 2 eggs into a dozen, and hopefully that works. Sometimes you get a dozen eggs and all you end up with very bad omelette sometimes, but we'll see what happens. So for me, it's kind of a mixture of both.
Yeah.
And I find both just as enjoyable and challenging and as exciting.
Dariusz.
Well, we may ask you a simple question. Why you're composers? Because we love music. Because we listened to the music as when we were a child. So we are influenced by artists. We used to be fans of them. So we were influenced by artists, and then we had a dream. We want to be like that. We want to be like, for example, in my case, like Pinori, like Bernard Parmigiani, like Patrick Stokes, and then we are influenced by people we are working with. So I really like to collaborate because it might open a completely new space, a completely new area, which I think I wouldn't enter being only a solo artist.
Yeah, sometimes difficult to arrive at this new place.
Simply, just show me something I'm unable to see. And I like to collaborate with both electronic artists. For example, last year I released an album with a great Polish composer, my good friend Krzysztof Gawlas, which is an album of music recorded, totally improvised in my studio, music for modular synthesizers.
Yeah.
Some of them even built by Krzysztof and me. And I also like to collaborate with acoustic musicians. Like, for example, I collaborate with also my good friend Paweł Zagańczyk, who's one of the best Polish accordionists. And we also made an album a couple years ago. I also collaborate with a lot of other instrumentalists since I was initially, as a kid, I was a pianist. I was in a piano class in a musical school. But I can say now I'm entirely an electronic musician. So collaborating with acoustic musicians, well, you know what I mean, acoustic musicians. We used to play acoustic instruments like trumpet, like a saxophone, for example. I also 2 years ago collaborated with a great Swiss-American saxophonist, Laurent Estopie. He actually commissioned a piece, so I composed a piece for him, which was premiered during the ICMC in Limited. Right. And I also like to collaborate with non-musical artists, like, for example, filmmakers. I think about 300 films were made for my music. For music, not music for films, I'm also doing music for films, but also a lot of films were made for my music. And some of them won major festivals, and
It's an interesting way around of doing a pre-owned music.
Yes, I think that's a curiosity. There is a major video clip festival in Poland, which obviously usually presents clips for pop music, rock music, pop music, and so on. And in 2017, the Grand Prix of this festival won a video clip for my piece, which was really very, very strange. Since I had a concert, I wasn't able to attend the festival, but I was really very curious. How those people who usually expect it will be a rock music, a pop, hip hop, whatever,
choose yours,
and then they was forced to watch this thing. It's on YouTube, so if you're interested, you can find it. Anyway, I'd love to collaborate with people because meeting people, being with people, working with people is actually an essential part of what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Very good, thank you. I'm just going to see which this next clip is. We're going to watch one more clip and then we'll have any questions and then we unfortunately need to wrap up because we need to get down to Sound Kitchen for 12:30. This is the clip that I talked about earlier with the couple with the objects. Video there because they're performing later at Sound Kitchen for anybody who would like to see them. We've got a couple of minutes if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask about any of the things or anything else. Yes.
You mentioned that you saw QLab as the death of kind of sounds. It's for not being, I guess, generative or responsive. And I wonder if you think similarly about the rise of AI that might be able to be kind of generative and responsive, but whether it's still lacking that kind of human messiness.
That's a wonderful question, and if we had another 3 or 4 days, it would be fantastic to explore it.
But in 6 minutes.
In 6 minutes, I think for me the issue with QLab, and this is what I've seen in a number of shows, is you'll have your operators sitting there flicking through their magazine waiting for the next cue. They have completely lost any relationship with the theatre that they're working with, particularly if they're on like show 120 or whatever. But for the actor and for the audience, this is their first time. And I think for us as particularly operators in that situation, it's our duty also to be in a situation where we're just as engaged with the show as the actor is. And it's very easy with something where you just wait for the stage manager to go, sound cue 28A, stand by, sound Q28, go sit there back your mag, you know. And that was what I was meaning by the death of sound. I think QLab is a really great way of organising sound in such a way that it can be then presented in such a way where you can sit there and just hit the space bar when you're told to. As far as AI goes, I'm just so waiting for this to keep going. I think it's one of the best things that's come up. For two reasons. One is that it kind of, it's what I've seen in AI actually has really kind of taken in the human component. It can talk to us like when you read ChatGPT written text. It sounds like it can be a good story, and I've had some fantastic things happen with that. And I think there's a very interesting thing, like particularly with the guy from Google who actually started working with all this stuff. His first position was to try and find out how human brains think and how we relate, and that's how we went into AI. The other side of it is that we can put forward a provocation which then comes back with a whole lot of other responses to that provocation. And for me, I find that incredibly interesting. Like, I'm forced to think in ways that I couldn't imagine, or I'm forced to respond to those things. So, and I think that's going to happen ubiquitously.
Thank you. If you have any responses or thoughts about this session, there's bits of paper on the tables with pencils, and if you'd like to write anything and roll it up and pop it in one of the holes, that would be really good. They're collecting these as part of the process from this stage over Prague Quadrennial. But thank you for staying with us and listening. Really nice to have you. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Dariusz. Thank you very much.